it's really interesting concept because it's a single player MMORPG. Yeah, doesn't sound right, isn't it? But it's basically, I think the concept is that it's basically all the NPCs are AI. They're all generative AIs. Every NPC you encounter, every other players you encounter, everything you encounter is going to be AI. It's going to be generative AI. So the AI is gonna form their own party, the AI is forming their own guild, the AIs trade with each other, and then all that kind of stuff, right? So basically, all the players you're interacting with is going to be AI. Everything's going to be AI, and in a way, this is a very scary. This is a very scary concept, right? So basically, we are solely focusing on a RPG, and the MMO part where it's basically taken care of by some sort of AI, So there's no more actual human interactions, but you can still have an interaction with something, with a quote unquote player. Could this actually be the future of MMORPGs, where basically every single player hosting their own world, and every player's experience is going to be different, every player encounter is going to be different because they have their own individual world to play with. Okay. I think it's a very interesting concept, but it's going to be really hard to execute, especially for this project alone. Okay. This might be the first of its kind, but there will be more that follows it, and I can promise that, because of how powerful AI is going to be, especially when they get things better and better, and especially the release of Unreal 5.3. I think that's the latest one, with the newest graphics and everything like that. Basically, you don't have to worry about graphics anymore. All you have to do is worry about the performance of the AI. Right. I think that's what happens. And then, yeah. And with that, yeah. I mean, for sure, like, we all should keep in some sort of an eye out. We should keep an eye out on this game for sure. Because how it could be like it's a very groundbreaking concept, but it could also lead to a future of single player MMORPGs. Yeah. It's scary though, it's scary. I think, but it kind of makes sense, right? Because modern MMORPGs starting to deviating from the MMO part into purely the RPGs, right? I mean, come on, let me know. Basically, when you play an MMORPG, which part of it are you focusing on? Are you focusing more on the MMO part, or are you focusing on the RPG part? I'm pretty sure a lot of players are actually focusing on the RPG part, right? The MMO, I feel like it's more of an add-on, especially now. Like MMORPGs are tuning more towards the RPG, where they're focusing more on the single player experience rather than the multiplayer experience. If that makes sense, right? Like we can see it in a lot of games. That's basically like that. Okay. Let's say that we can just take an example of a really old running game that we can clearly see the transition between that. I would just say MapleStory. Let's say MapleStory, right? MapleStory, when it first started, it was heavily leaning towards a community game, where a lot of like aspects of the game that kind of requires parties. For example, you want to level up the fastest, you have to do party quests and stuff like that. And starting somewhere around one of their updates, I think it was the Big Bang updates, is you can see the heavy shift from multiplayer, from like some sort of MMO aspect into a purely RPG aspect. Right. where leveling becomes faster and party quests become obsolete, where solo training is basically the fastest way. Of course, there are still guilds and guild benefits like that, and marriage and stuff like that. But as the game progresses, it becomes less and less because of how fast or how fast a class can clear mobs, can just level up, right? So before you require like 3 or 4 people just to cover every single corner of the map. Now a single class, like one skill, you can basically a map wipe, and that entirely took away the whole like the requirement for partying. Even bosses, like people soloing bosses, people solo this, solo that. Like the need for party, unless it's like extremely high end, there's almost no need. There's almost no need for that, and that's the part. And that's just one game. And I'm sure like a lot of popular games is starting to deviate from that to a more single player friendly game. That's what this game is going to do, right? This game is going to help enrich that single player experience even more with the use of AI, right? But there's also the issue of the cost, because you're essentially running like a generative AI for every single player on a massive scale. And how will that work? How is that gonna impact performance? And how how good the AI is going to be like mimicking a player's behavior, mimicking players mimicking like human players, right? How well would that be? And how will the server handle it? For example, how is the AI going to run when the player logged off? For every single player, right? We're not even looking like 1 or 2 players. For example, if there's gonna be 1,000 players, there's gonna be 1,000 worlds, 1,000 different worlds. Let's say that each world is populating by 10,000 different AIs. That's well, how much is that? 1 million? No, 10 million already, right? How would that work? That's gonna be a question. But yeah, I mean, for sure it's an interesting concept that I think a lot of people are going to keep an eye on it. It can be a good thing, or it can be the end of gaming, online gaming.